All right, so next up, we have Jamie Patton from UW Nutrient Pest Management Program, and Chelsea Zegler, who is an Extension Ag Water Quality Program Outreach Specialist. And they are going to be talking about a guide that they've developed for on-farm research and demonstration methods. Maybe I'll get a problem. All right, so here we are. So we're getting closer, as they said first. 2 sessions in front of happy hour at 4:30. So we will make this as exciting as we possibly can, right? So, Chelsea said when it's her turn to take over, she said that she will be doing her part as interpretive dance. Mine is just simply presentation. So hold on, I have the first 3 slides and then the real fun begins. No one's listening, so I can keep talking and telling stories. Perfect. All right, so basically what Chelsea and I are here to talk about is just to remind us as we start to plan for the next round of grants. So I have the pleasure of sitting on a team that helps review your grants. And it is a really fun process because when we look out there, you all are doing some amazing, amazing work. So when you get to that section that says demonstration and outreach, I want to make sure, and that's what we're talking about today, that we understand the difference between demonstration and research, and to know that each one has significant value. That's what this morning's sessions, I love them, right? Commit, just commit and go. And that's what we're looking at here with these demonstrations and this research. Commit and go. And the problem is when we think about it, a lot of us put a lot of more value on research. But in all reality, when we look at those reviews, and as an educator myself, I know the value of a well-done demonstration. Seeing is believing. Seeing that practice in your field, right? So I'm stationed up in Northeast Wisconsin. And if you are up in Northeast Wisconsin with me, you know I hear it all the time, right? Kiwani is not our lake tag, all right? Right? You all say that in your region, right? We are not our lake tag, right? So we want to take that research out into our own communities, demonstrating that is really, really important. To let people know that what the science is saying does hold true for our area. So when we're evaluating these grant applications, I was saying my focus is on how are you doing outreach? How are you helping to expand that education, to expand that message on conservation as well as those practices? So when we look at Nelson Mandela, he said education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. So why we need you? I think this is really important. So I went in and I tried to dive into how many conservation professionals work in the state of Wisconsin. All right, so Wisconsin Land and Water said that there's approximately 370 Wisconsin land and water personnel out there working across the state. So I kind of ballparked it and said, well, there's probably somewhere between more than 600 conservation personnel out there on the landscape. But we have to reach 14.1 million cropland acres in the state of Wisconsin. That's why working with you, the 36 current DATCP producers like Watersheds, to spread this educational vision, spread these technologies out there on the landscape to preserve land and water is very, very important. So Chelsea, what is the difference between on-farm research and demonstration?
All right, thanks, Jamie. All right, so we're going to highlight a few of the differences between demonstration and research. And my clubhouse is going to go out at the perfect time. All right, so demonstration, right, normally highlights the results of a proven practice. So what are some common examples? We can think of Patton and Chelsea has done a lot of research on ryelet before corn silage. So demonstrate, but again, that was at Arlington, right? So demonstrating that in your fields can help show some of the potential differences in yield and help believers in your area. And then increasing familiarity familiarity with the new practice, we saw Jacob talk about annual forage rotations, and annuals. So alternative annual forage rotations, so that could be something to practice in a demonstration and show other producers what's involved. Compared to research, right, which is normally trying to generate answers to a new question. So we have a lot of producers planting green, but there's still a lot of questions there. So we have research going on is that rye acting as a green bridge for diseases in situations? Do we need to change the amount or timing of fertilizer? So those are specific questions that we need mineral data to answer. And then sometimes the research follows what's already going on like on the landscape, right? So we know that Jeff and Harvard has done a lot of work on compost. And they've shown that, he can do it successfully on his farm. And he's seen anecdotal evidence of, higher yields in different systems. So this year we set up a replicated plot study to look at nutrient availability compared to manure versus compost manure or synthetic fertilizer. So those are some examples of the different goals of research for demonstration. The details or the how much of a pain it is, I guess I would say, for plot design. So demonstration, if we're having a field day, you want people to see the different practices that you're displaying, right? So in this picture, if we want to look at 3 different nitrogen rates, right, that's something we can visually see, and we might only need 3 different strains. Or say you want to answer, what different cover crop species do for nutrient cycling. You can imagine, no cover crop after a clover, or a cover crop after rye. That would be a good visual demonstration. For research, we have normally like 4 reps and many strips. So when we think about how does the cover crop affect, nitrogen availability in the corn system, one particular one I worked on for interseeding red clover, 140 plots, just to get at how much N credit light is provided to a corn crop. So significantly more detailed.
Right. So when we look at oftentimes, if you're evaluating this for your own fields and your own farms, estimating the amount of land area required to put either a demonstration or a research in there. Chelsea, who are we going to work with to establish these, whether it's a demonstration or a research? Who can we work with to get these set up on our farms?
The options. Work with Extension in Wisconsin-Madison. We've also heard from NGOs today.
There's lots of different individuals. So your land and water conservation personnel are out there, as well as your NRCS personnel. And if you haven't, so there were 100 SARE publications on the front desk when you walked in today. So if you didn't get the publication on how to conduct research and demonstrations on your farm, make sure you pick up one of those. But there are lots of agency folks, university folks, NGO folks that can help you identify what's the best way to set up either a demonstration or research. Because let's be honest, a good demonstration is highly visual, right? And so working with people to make sure that you have it oriented in the right way, the right width, and you get the timing right can be really, really important. How about data collection, Chelsea?
So data can be collected both from demonstration and research, right? Demonstration, we're typically only looking at a single year. And we can vary on timing of measurements, right? Anything that's useful for the group to know, yield, things like that. With research, we normally we want multiple sites and multiple years. And we're a lot stricter on timings and amount of research. We need to, statistically prove a lot of times that the difference wasn't just due to the spot in the field, but due to the treatment effect.
And why this is important is when you're filling out your grant application, you need to be thinking not only for this year, but the years ahead. So if you really are wanting to do research as part of your farmer-led initiative, making sure that you have that set up, you know how many years it's going to take, and that you're writing that into the grant process year after year and articulating it to the review committee is going to be really important so that we understand and know that it is truly research versus its demonstration process. So what about data use? This is probably one of the biggest factors when we think about the difference between a demonstration as well as research is how we use that data. And how do we use the data differently?
Yep, so as we mentioned with plot goals, or when we were talking about plot goals, right? The data is used for education, And it's applicable to your area, right? That's how we're doing the demonstration. That's why we're showing the slight differences from Arlington that you can show that you're also making it work on your farm. So, you know, and you certainly wouldn't want me in Dane County to tell you my yields and expect those yields, you know, in Hawaii County.
Very good. Yeah, and this is what's really important is when we think about that design and the protocol and how we extrapolate that data. I always use the example, for example, is Benadryl, right? So many of us have children, right? What does Benadryl do to your children? Makes them, that's the most common, right? The most common thing. So if we worked with Darren, there we go. He was covering his name tag. He didn't want me to know his name. So if I took data just from Darren, right? He would tell me that Benadryl makes children sleepy. Is that true for all of us? Unfortunately, I can tell you it is not. All right. So there's either one. So the research shows that you have one or two reactions to Benadryl. Either it makes you sleepy or it makes you, oh my goodness, a circus. All right. So you need to make sure that that's when we talk about research and how we're going to extrapolate that. Thinking about that data collection, thinking about that longevity, thinking about that site selection is going to be important in how we then can use that data. Can we use that data to make decisions across the state over the long term, or are we just trying to show that a proven practice already works? So when we think about these, again, when you write those research, when you write your grants this year, realize I'm not valuing, as one of the many reviewers, I'm not valuing research more than demonstration when I'm evaluating it. Remember, I'm focused on how you're helping us get that conservation method out there. So in general, when you're starting to describe in that process, describe if you're doing a demonstration and how you're going to approach it. And if you're going to be doing research, right? Research is great too. Tell me whether or not you're going to be doing independent research, meaning that you are going to be designing the research as part of the partner lab. You are going to be working with the scientists to get that designed correctly, and you are going to be making all of those decisions. So protocol, data collection, how you're going to report that data. You are making every single decision. If you're not ready for that, and I will tell you, that is a huge undertaking, right? That's why I specify you should be working with a research scientist from some organization to get that done, because that is huge. It needs to be set up properly before you begin. If you're not ready to take that on, there are also a lot of great opportunities for collaborative research. Basically, where you're already working with a researcher who has a set protocol, and basically now you're following a recipe. So you get that same pleasure of helping to contribute to the scientific database, but you do not have to design it from day one. You follow directions. The key here then is you are giving up some of that autonomy. So when you were told to collect data, you darn well better collect the data on that date. You better collect it in the proper method and so on or so forth. But it takes some of that pressure off, and that's what we oftentimes recommend for those groups who aren't ready to dive into independent research yet. Collaborative research is a great way to, quote unquote, cut your teeth on the research process. So quick questions you ask yourself. Question number one, Chelsea.
What are you trying to achieve?
Right? Is it education, or are you got to liven this up. You're all staring at me like it's the middle of the afternoon. All right. So Chelsea, what are we trying to achieve? Are we just trying to educate, or are we trying to solve all the world's problems in a research plot? So if you're just trying to educate, call it a demonstration and move on. It's a highly valuable process. Question number two.
What you want to contribute to a collaborative project?
Or
do you want to control start to finish?
So if you're a control freak, that independent research might be for you, but if you want to work as a team answering questions, then we might want to look at that collaborative research. Question number three, Chelsea.
Do you have the necessary resources, financial, land, labor, equipment?
What does that mean?
Do I have the time to be taking 30 soil samples this year in the middle of harvest season?
Am I willing to give up my vacation to go spray a roller crimped cereal rye crop, right? In order to collect data, because that happens, right? So those are fun things. Do you have the equipment? So oftentimes when I reread these research grants, you have these really grandiose ideas, but you don't have the equipment to do it. I'm going to measure greenhouse gases. Well, that's fantastic. Do you have that multi-$1,000 piece of equipment to do that? And do you have the capability to get one? Do you know how to run it? Because I don't. So there's questions along those lines. And question number four.
Are you willing and able to accept the crop production risk
is huge, right? So luckily, the producer who I had a roller print plot in County Met County isn't here. So John Aarons, you can raise your hand. I had a roller print plot. If you were worried that we took a yield hit there, yeah, but it was nothing like Calumet. Right? So there are some production risks, right? When Mother Nature just doesn't play nice with us when we're changing our planting timings. I don't know, weeds really liked last year. Weeds really liked it better than my corn last year, right? So there was a production risk when we looked at some of these lowering of inputs. So thinking about the long term, not only the time, money, and labor investment in that process, but also depending upon how large that research project is or how large that demonstration project is, are you able to accept losing an entire crop, because it would be known to happen. Typically, it's not an entire loss, but you have the potential for a yield loss.
That is, the grant does take away some of the risk, right? Do groups write in some compensation or risk for doing experiments?
Oftentimes, if you are working on a collaborative project, there may be a stipend that comes back to you to accommodate for some of the risks that you're incurring. If you, however, are conducting your own independent research, you're probably assuming all of that risk on your own. So realize that sometimes you get better yields. So of course, as humans, we always focus on the negative, right? Sometimes there are positive outcomes, and many times there are positive outcomes to our research, but sometimes they're not. So making sure that you are aware of that when you enter into that process is very, very important. With that, any questions? If you know me, I'm like 1 minute early. That is amazing. That never happens. All right. Questions for us? If you ever do have questions, please don't hesitate to contact someone as you're filling out that process. Can be very, very complicated thinking about what is a demonstration, what is a research project, what is a collaborative research project. So reach out. I see Scott staring at me. Reach out to Scott. He can answer all of your questions, right? He said, it's like, oh, she knows my name. That's right. Yes, I do. All right. Call John. Call Brian. Yes, Brian.
How do we all get on the same page as producer-led? Meaning, this data is collected. How do we all collect the same data?
That is a fantastic question, right? So there are initiatives right now in UW looking at some of those research projects. The on-farm research project trials are looking at a particular practice and collecting data regionally along those lines. We know also, when I was just putting slides together for Ron, you're over here, right? So we'll hear tonight at the now called the Cover Crop Networking Dinner. At the Cover Crop Networking Dinner, right? Ron is friends with everyone. So I had to put logos on there, not only for UW, but Grasslands 2.0, Greenlands, Blue Waters. We want our lands to be green and our waters to be blue. Greenlands, Blue Waters. You had Dairy Forage Research Center. You had Sand County Foundation. You have on and on and on and on. There are lots of opportunities out there for you to engage in collaborative research. And the question is, you just now have to ask. If you want to, as a farmer-led, lead that, Brian, you are now the leader, right, in developing independent research for the farmer-led research project. He's excited to contact Brian. Bill just raised his hand. He's volunteering for that effort as well. So, and I will tell you what he just mouthed me. Yes, Bill. I can read lips.
A model that has a lot of utility for the farm community, practical farms of Iowa.
Exactly, sir.
Data is aggregated and presented as and accessible. That's been something that has been on many people's wish list for the state of Wisconsin. Where are we in that?
We are moving forward in that initiative, and Ann has her hands raised, so you can chat with Ann in the back of the room. She's straight behind you. He's nodding, he knows. So you can chat with Ann as we move forward. There's initiatives there. Realize it's a huge undertaking, right? Huge undertaking. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. Iowa happens to be right. All great things come from Iowa, right, sir? You and I both. So also from the Iowa Erosional Service.
Talks about the Iowa Soil Use gathered
You betcha. And there's, so if we look at Minnesota has a whole soil health initiative, South Dakota has the same. So we're looking at many states have these collaborative efforts. Wisconsin, although we lead, I will argue we lead on farmer-led initiatives and watersheds along those lines. We are lacking, we're falling behind some of the other states in these collaborative research initiatives. So it's our time. So like I said, you and Brian and Ann are leading this. So his name's Brian, his name's Bill. Lost it there. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.